ModCons is all about showcasing modern conservatism, and what better way than speaking to the future of the party? For our new series, Candidates Cornered, I will be speaking with Conservative parliamentary candidates, starting with our general election 2024 intake. Today, I'm joined by Samia Hersi. Samia, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, thank you. So Samia, you stood in the 2024 general election in Queen's Park and Maida Vale.
Yeah.
How did it go?
Well, I didn't win, but it was a good experience.
Yeah.
I did really enjoy myself campaigning, and I'm not going to say it wasn't tiring, and it was obviously a very difficult election
Yeah.
for the party. But if someone asked me to do it again, I would definitely stand again, and I definitely want to stand again in the next election.
Amazing.
I really enjoyed myself, and it went very quickly. So I did get selected. I went through a full selection process. I got selected about 9 months before the general election. Obviously, we didn't know when the election was going to get called.
Right.
So I kind of expected that I would have about a year run through ahead of the general election. So it gave me a good opportunity to campaign and like actually campaign and see that typically wasn't going to win.
Right.
So I was able to canvass and like areas we had conservative councillors in Little Venice, such a beautiful
Yeah.
area.
Yeah.
Did some campaigning in Maida Vale too, in Queen's Park.
Nice.
And really build like a name for myself, but also meeting lots of different constituents and having visits across the constituency. But yeah, I really enjoyed myself, but unfortunately I didn't win.
Yeah.
So I did come third. The Greens just beat me to
God,
second place.
those
But
greens.
with the new boundaries, it was inevitable, and I think that was the case across London as well. The Greens did quite well in London, which
Right.
will be a problem for Labour to that they will have to address
Yeah.
actually at the next election.
Absolutely. I think people kind of underestimated the Greens a lot. It was kind of Lib Dems
Mm.
for us, a bit of reform,
Yeah.
and Labour kind of just thought they would cruise through, but the Greens kind of
Yes.
mess them up a bit.
Yeah, and the independents too.
Yeah.
So I live in Tower Hamlets in East London. So
Yeah.
they independents have a bit of a reputation in that part of London, but of course in other areas,
Yeah.
Birmingham and lots of different places in Rochdale too. So the independents were definitely causing some problems for Labour, and I think they probably will still continue to do so as well
Yeah.
at the next election. But that's their problem.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No, I think I had four independents.
oh wow.
Yeah, which really changed the game,
Uh,
especially for Dawn Butler.
yeah.
She lost a lot of
Oh wow.
votes to them. So it was the first time you stood. What made you want to stand for Parliament, and why the Conservative Party?
So standing for Parliament, so I would say I always kind of had in my mind maybe that is something that I would want to do in the future. So I first of council in 2022, I stood in Canary Wharf and Tower Hamlets. It was a great experience. It was an interesting experience. I think standing in Tower Hamlets in itself is an achievement because the politics there can be quite intense and
Right.
different. And can be quite rough as well. And I grew up around that and saw that. And actually, that my experiences growing up in Tower Hamlets is what motivated me to eventually first to stand for council, then eventually for Parliament.
Yeah.
Because my first memory of politics was I had George Galloway knock on my grandparents' door during the 2005 general election.
Wow.
So that was like, as in when I say my first experience of politics, but that was first individual level of like seeing it play out personally for me. So unfortunately, I opened the door and I was just thinking, who's this strange man? He was just very bizarre, and he just like, oh hello, is anyone in here? Is there any adults I can speak to? And he had a very strange accent. I'm just gonna say that as well. And so I was just very confused. What is this man saying? And it wasn't even just that. There was so he had this basically circus around him.
Right.
It was all of these local media taking pictures, and it's quite intimidating to have that in your front garden, and especially for a child, right? So I don't remember what happened after that, but it was that campaign, the 2005 general election campaign in Bethnal Green and Bow, which I think Labour then did lose that seat to George Galloway's party, Respect Party. But it was always seeing that and growing up around that, the division, the identity politics part of it, where I just felt like both Labour and the Independents kind of played into. That's how they did politics. It was always negative.
Yeah.
It was always a fanfare. It was always about the politicians rather than the community and the constituents.
Right.
So I was just so tired of seeing it for how many years. And eventually I just thought, actually, I want to stand for council. I didn't win, unfortunately, in 2022, but it was a good experience. And I learned a lot from that campaign as well. And And I think, you know, if you want to see change, you've got to be that change. You've got to lead from the front and show that actually there are people that care. There are people that are not going to just make it all about themselves, are in it for the right reasons, because they care about the community and want to make a difference. So that was what kind of got me started first in terms of involved in politics. And so while I was standing as a council candidate in Canary Wharf, so, and I stood for the Conservative Party, which in itself got a lot of attention too. They were like, what is this young woman that's Muslim, that's black, that's Somali, that's, you know. It's like, it was just a lot of this. I had, anyway, I was like, none of that matters, nor should it matter. But so when I was doing this, so when I was campaigning, you know, used a lot of social media to do that, to advertise and publicize what I was doing in the community, in the area, and my campaigns. So it got the attention of CCHQ, and someone, like the head of outreach at the time, she spoke to me, asked me about whether I considered standing for Parliament in the next election. So I was really taken aback, because I remember when CCHQ seemed to have an interest in my campaign, I thought, oh, maybe they're going to help me out in Canary Wharf. They're going to send lots of people here to help me. I was like, yay, this is really exciting. I'm going to win this. That didn't happen, unfortunately, and I didn't win Canary Wharf, but they did encourage me to stand for Parliament, and they helped me through the process to get onto the list and stuff. And I eventually did in 2024. And I guess I kind of touched a bit upon it about why I'm a Conservative. So values for me, like aspiration, hard work, personal responsibility, and seeing people as individuals. That's why I'm a Conservative. It's those values. And I saw a lot of stuff that from both Labour and from the Independents, where they just put people in boxes. They saw people based on what their background is and what their identity is, and they structured their campaigns around it in such a divisive way, which I just thought was wrong. I don't like putting people in boxes. I don't want to be put in a box, and I like to see people for who they could be and what the potential they have, and that's why I'm a Conservative, especially with, and we've seen this. Oh, sorry, I'm going off on a tangent now, but I love it. Obviously, there's the schools bill that's going through Parliament right now, which I think is awful, because it's essentially they're trying to get rid of academies. That's what they're doing. So I went to an academy. That was something that had a lot of cross-party consensus. And this was something that was basically was rolled out primarily by the Conservative Party. And I'm a school governor for academy, and education is really important to me. And I think education, aspiration, opportunity, that's the Conservative Party embodies those values, and I benefited a lot from that rollout. So that's why I'm a Conservative, because values, aspiration, hard work, opportunity, those are important to me. And I think Labour is just a very negative party. And that's why I'm a Conservative.
I love that. And I think it's absolutely mad the way that they're kind of demonizing academies now. They're trying to restrict them. They want everyone to be the same, think the same, learn the same. It's just really, really depressing.
I just feel like the way they see, like even with the stuff with the VATs and private schools, it's like they're getting rid of opportunity for the sake of equality, which I think is such an awful way of trying to achieve equality. If you want to achieve equality, if you want to make sure that people have access to the same opportunities, expand opportunities, don't limit them, don't take them away from other people. That's wrong, and that's I think a very unhealthy way of thinking about society as a whole. And I do really worry about the consequences of those choices.
I think that's totally right. And I was speaking to someone the other day, and they were talking about like the danger of Labour's policies becoming embedded. And that's my biggest fear with them. It's like, I know that we can row things back, but I do worry that they will become embedded. So opportunity, aspiration, that's part of your story. You have an incredible story. So, you know, you're a first generation Brit whose parents fled to Somalia, daughter of a bus driver and a cleaner, inspired by their values of hard work and aspiration to achieve great things. I presume that your parents, the aspiration that they instilled in you made you, you know, move towards a Conservative Party. What was it like, you know, growing up in a family where they were striving to be their best?
You know, my parents were always there for me. They're always encouraging me to do more, to be better, to succeed. That's what aspiration starts at home, right? And I think the family plays a big part of that. And I think, again, like you don't see Labour talk about families that much, whereas you do with the Conservative Party. And I think the family unit is a big part of that. My parents are divorced, and most of my upbringing was while they were divorced, but nonetheless, family was very important to me. They always encouraged me to succeed. They always, like, whenever I had those moments of self-doubt, and like anyone does, and any young person or child does, they always encouraged me and lifted me up and believed in me. And that's something that not all kids can have. And I was fortunate to have that, even though I, came from a working class background, and it kind of just showed that it doesn't matter. As in, I'm not saying there aren't barriers people experience when they're growing up in particular backgrounds, but it doesn't matter, nor should it matter, because what really matters is about self-belief, resilience, confidence, and also having access to those opportunities. And I just think I just see it even with some schools, the schools I went to, the state schools I went to, I just always felt like there was this negativity that some teachers would push. There's a kind of culture where it's like, oh, you got to manage your expectations, like as in, people from your background or from this area, they don't tend to do this sort of stuff, they don't tend to do that sort of stuff. And I just thought it was so wrong. And I always came from in my opinion, the more left-wing teachers than
so true.
And I just think it's just such a negative way of seeing the world. And I think we need to see, as I said, I think it's about seeing what people can be and what they can achieve in their potential. And I think that's a fundamentally conservative principle and idea. And I think Labour embodies the opposite of that. We see in education reforms as well.
No, I think you're right. And I think with a lot of like lefties, and I don't want to be, left versus right, but a lot of those types of people, their intentions are so good, but they don't realize that they're really stunting people by saying, oh, your type of people should do this. And the fact that, for example, Bridget Phillipson wants to get rid of Latin and include like graffiti, it's just so patronizing to be like, oh, your type of people shouldn't try and aspire to learn about the foundation of all languages. You should learn about street art because that's what you guys do, right? It's just
ridiculous,
so backwards.
It's awful. It's just, that's what I mean. They're just scrapping opportunities, taking away opportunities. And then even with the VAT on school fees, like that will have a knock-on effect about the financial model of these independent schools. And it's the smaller independent schools that are going to be most affected by those changes. And that also means that actually those schools are going to be more unable to offer out scholarships and for children and young people from more deprived backgrounds. So actually, there's going to have a complete negative consequence. It's going to result in more resources going to be needed for state schools, and we're just going to have to wait and see. Like, as an even saying with the budget, people did warn them about racial borrowing, and wow, we're seeing the consequences of that playing out now.
So you said you grew up in Bethnal Green, is that right?
In Bow.
In Bow.
I spent most of my life in Bow, but I also I was born in North London, Edgware, and I grew up a bit in Conondale. My dad's side of the family lived in that area as well.
Nice. So you are a Londoner through and through then?
Born and raised, I am.
Awesome. So obviously, and I don't want to get too much into it, but for Londoners these days, we hear stories every day. Someone's, being attacked, or it's a challenge growing up in London, especially as a young person. Do you think it's always been like that? Do you find that maybe with social media, the bullying online, people taking videos of young kids getting like beaten up at school, do you think that things are different now, or has it always been tough to be a Londoner?
I think it's always been tough. I think it is difficult. Like, I'm not going to say like most young people in London are like really struggling and involved in like life crime. Like some people like to peddle on social media, and I think we've got to be careful sometimes of talking really negatively about certain parts of London. I'm not saying there aren't problems there, but I think people need to be careful about that. Just think about being more responsible in those kind of conversations. But there are challenges there. Yes, you're more likely to get hurt or stabbed in London because there's a bigger population as the capital city. And there are risks for young people especially, and social media does play a part in that. So I worked in schools all across London for about a year before I went to work for Gillian Keegan, the former education secretary, and a mentor of mine as well. And so I was working for education charities. I dealt with like casework around, not casework, but like as in child protection cases in those schools, and a lot of them did involve social media where kids were threatening each other. So I guess it makes everything more constant, and makes things move quite quickly, and it means also things can escalate quite quickly. So I do think it has a significant consequence, particularly on the mental health of children and young people. So when I was growing up, like social media was starting to become a thing, so it wasn't too much of a problem, but there was a lot of bullying on there, and which was I guess obviously it wasn't great for people there. But I think generally for young people in London, I think they do tend to have better prospects in terms of
Right.
social mobility because more jobs are here,
Mm.
more opportunity, I guess more like opportunities to do work experience and
Right.
like internships
True.
and apprenticeships. So yes, there are consequences on around the knife crime and being more vulnerable because of just statistically where they are.
Yeah.
But also statistically, yes, there's also more opportunities for social mobility
No,
too,
I think
that you don't see in other parts of the
I
country.
think you're so right. That's such a good point. And I've never, and it's obvious when I think of like graduates, but I don't think about those younger kids kind of coming out of school, 16. They can actually start and get into something really easily, either intern, work experience, whatever that might be. So you're right that it might have challenges, but there are also a lot of benefits that, you know, these young people can grab and hopefully run with. And so it's nice and positive. Samia is very positive. I love it. So you've done some incredible work. You've mentioned some of it. You started out, well, one of the things you started out doing was working with an education charity called Into University. What inspired you into this line of work? And do you think, you know, university now has become, I don't know, I feel like there's a bit of a backlash to university. I feel like when I was growing up, especially, like it was like go to school, go to uni, get a job.
Yeah.
And I think since when I graduated, it was the recession. And since then, it's been very hard for like young graduates to get jobs.
Yeah.
So it's not as formulaic. Obviously, also tuition fees have like tripled since then. So you're seeing a lot of younger people going into things like apprenticeships or trying to start their own side hustle or trying to get on social media and do things themselves. Do you think that, you know, there is a backlash to university? Do you think it's still a kind of a useful path to take? What are your thoughts on university, I guess, in general?
So what I would say about university, like as in university, I think it was the right option for me probably because it was my first, I would say from my own experience, it was the first time that I actually was able to leave London for a long period of time.
Right.
So I went to University of Leicester, went to Midlands, so that was a good opportunity, and just meeting other people that were from different backgrounds too, because as in you don't often, unless you move away from home, you don't always have that opportunity, right? And that was actually that was kind of helped along my political journey, from like, I guess initially being not stereotypical, but being expected to be a Labour Party supporter because of my background, becoming, and then eventually joining the Conservative Party in 2018. With university, I think it was the right decision for me, but it's not always the right decision for everyone. I feel like I got the value, isn't like, because I was one of those cohort that had to pay 9,000, still paying off my tuition fees. But do I feel like I got value for it? I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm going to be honest. And obviously now it's increased even further, and I think even
it's going up again,
it's going up again now. My brother didn't go to university. He did try it, but he didn't like it, and he ended up doing an apprenticeship himself because he just didn't want to do university. I guess because my parents were encouraging him to do that. So there's a lot of like obviously parental expectations there, but yeah, university is not for everyone, and that's okay. And I think there's an awful lot of universities that maybe we should question about whether they should be there, and the courses they offer, do they offer value for money, and then also the fact that I don't know generally overall if it is. I think we're going to have a conversation or debate about the financial model for universities, because a lot they are very dependent on students and the student numbers and attracting as many students as possible, but at the same time a lot is not competitive enough. I don't think it's competitive enough. I don't think they're giving enough choice or options or differentiating themselves from other universities. I think there's too many universities. I think there's too many courses, and sometimes some universities should be allowed to fail. That's the market. Isn't it? If you want to drive better standards, there's going to be failure in the market, right? So, and I think we shouldn't be so averse to that or be terrified of that. But obviously we need to make sure that it's managed well enough so it's not affecting current students there. But I think with the university, I don't know, I'm not going to say I have all the answers about how it should change, but I think it, you know, I think we need to kind of question about some universities and whether they offer value for money for students.
And I always find it so funny, like thinking about how Bridget Phillipson, I always talk about her a lot because she does wind me up, but how she speaks about universities and they have to be protected at all costs, but then, you know, private schools are a different story. It just feels very ideological. It doesn't quite make sense. So talking of apprenticeships in university or not going to university, you worked for possibly the most famous apprentice in the country,
Yeah.
Gillian Keegan, who was the Education Secretary
Yes.
and also a famous apprentice. What was it like working for, an MP? What was it like working in Parliament? Yeah, tell us about it.
I really enjoyed it. I started in quite a tumultuous time. So just when I started, I think it was like September 2019. So I think Parliament just got prorogued. So there was the Supreme Court challenge and like there was all of that stuff. I think it was in between where they were trying to get that Brexit deal through, in between Theresa May stepping down as Prime Minister and then before the 2019 general election. So there was all of that happening, all the drama, and it was just so chaotic. It felt very strange. It was a privilege to work in Parliament. It's a beautiful, building, institution. And I think it's a fundamental part of British culture and history. But I really enjoyed it. It feels a bit long ago, so I'm trying to remember
what you did.
But yeah, so I actually started out working as an intern in an office through this program called the Speaker's Parliamentary Placement Scheme.
Oh, cool.
So it was a program that was set up by the previous speaker, John Bercow, to encourage more people from underrepresented backgrounds to pursue careers in politics.
Nice.
So, and often with internships in Parliament, they can be unpaid, which does close off other people who have the skills and talent, but they may not be able to afford to work for long periods of time unpaid.
Right.
So that's how I ended up working for Gillian. Then from a 9-month internship, I ended up being there for 2.5 years.
Amazing.
So, but she was a great person to work for.
Yeah.
Very supportive, and your experience really does shape who you're working for. And,
right.
And Gillian was great to work for, and she's also supported me in my journey to become a candidate as well.
Well, she's a character, isn't she?
I think what I really like about Gillian is that she is herself.
Yeah.
And I think we need people like that in politics that they are true to who they are and who themselves, and just like I hate because people say this to me as well. It's like just be normal.
Yeah.
Like it's okay for to have a personality, to be a person, to be individual.
Yeah.
And I just feel like even with maybe it's not right for me to say this, but I even think sometimes the candidates, they can be, and I get that pressure. Right. You want to make sure that you don't say the wrong thing. You want to make sure you're perfect. You want to be, you just don't want to have any controversy, which is totally understandable. But you can be yourself, and not do that at the same time. And you can show who you are and be honest and level down with people, and show your person, and that's okay.
No, you're right. I think one of the things I liked about Gillian Keegan was her story. It's like very real. It's like I love people who've come from, because I have as well, and I'm sure you have as well, you've come into conservatism against all odds kind of thing. And I just love those stories. They kind of speak to me a bit more. So you now work for a trade organisation, a trade association in the city. What made you want to move from politics to the private sector?
So actually Gillian encouraged me, to be honest. Nice. And she said that, like if you're looking for different opportunities, if you're looking for like a career progression, you should look into the private sector. And she actually had quite a successful career in business. She was in business for about 30 years. So, and like I'm not saying that I will probably have the same career she did, but yeah, she encouraged me to do that. And actually I think it's important to make sure that if you want to go into politics, have a varied level of experience. So I started out working in the charity sector, then obviously worked in the public sector for an MP, and now but most of my experience now actually has been primarily in the private sector so far. And I really enjoy my jobs. I work for a trade association in the city, so I mostly work around insurance. I also work around climate change and regulation as well. So, and I think it's a really, really interesting time. So I do public affairs for a trade association, and it is, although the general election result was disappointing, but it is interesting. It's an interesting time to be working in public affairs because there's lots of new stuff that's coming out from the government. Whether it's the right stuff or not, that's a different question. But there's a lot of stuff to come out that's coming out to engage with, and it's an exciting time. Yeah,
it is interesting to be. It's good because there are a lot of people in different parties who've had like experience in just one sector, and you've got experience in pretty much every sector, which does make you a bit of a secret weapon.
Let's see.
Obviously you do work in the city. What are the murmurings? What are people saying amidst this Rachel Reeves hot mess?
It's I would say, to be fair for the government right now, obviously there's all the stuff that's happening about government borrowing and the cost of borrowing going up. Part of it was triggered by global factors, because people like us in general inflation overall across the globe has been sticky. And then also the fact that Donald Trump's coming in,
Right.
he's having his inauguration pretty soon,
Yeah.
and he's talked about tariff and how he's going to raise tariffs pretty much on everyone. So there's global factors at play, but then there's also a unique UK situation in terms of the fact that that budget was stereotypical Labour tax and spend. Significant levels of borrowing. Like honestly, it was quite shocking. And actually, there was still a bit of activity in the bond markets just shortly after, but now it's really starting to kick in because of with Donald Trump now coming into the presidency. But it's also it was a bit unfortunate because also I think with the interest rates as a whole has gone up, so it means the cost of borrowing is even higher. So that's basically wiped out the headroom for the government, for the Treasury, for the Chancellor, and she's going to have to make some difficult decisions when it comes to the spring spending review that's coming up. Late spring, early summer.
Do you feel like there's optimism in the city, or do you think things are quite bleak?
I would say people, there was concern from some certain decisions. I think it was all these different decisions being made. So, for example, increasing national insurance employee-related national insurance contributions, the level of borrowing that was taking place, and that will, for a government that says growth is their number one mission, that's going to have a significant that will have consequences for growth, and that we're seeing that now. And not just growth and inflation too. So, and the budget was slightly inflationary. So we are seeing the consequences of that, and I think that was quite shocking in terms of how much national insurance employer-based national insurance contributions will increase, and they also lowered the threshold at what level employers will start paying, which I just, as in, I feel like this was all predictable. I'm sorry, but it was predictable. It was.
No, you're right.
And it
was just like a triple whammy. It was like blow after blow. I was like, what is going on here?
I mean, it's not even just that, but also more regulation for employers too. Obviously, there's employment rights bill. People have different views on that, but that's even more. There's a cost attached to those reforms too. True. So if you're a government that's trying to move fast, you bring all of these changes, and that's going to have consequences. And we're seeing that now.
Getting back to the party, local stuff. So you are currently an association chair in Stratford and Bow, the first. May I ask?
Yes, I am.
And still an active Conservative campaigner. What do you love about being a member of the Conservative Party?
What I love is that everyone's just like really motivated and interested, and like even though right now it is a difficult time for the party as we're building back from our worst ever defeat for a significant period of time in modern history, I think. But people are still excited. People are excited about the future of the party. The Conservative Party is the most successful political party in the world. So, this is a temporary period. The party will rebuild itself. And actually, with Labour making such a big mess of it right now, it's unbelievable. Like the decisions they've made, scandals they're getting themselves involved in, it's just all self-inflicted stuff. And it just shows the lack of preparation they've made. For a party that was in opposition for 14 years, there was significant lack of preparation into government. But what I like about being in the party and being a member, it's just that everyone's in it because they love politics, they love being around people, they care about the party, they care about the community, and most people are in it for the right reasons, and you make friends along in the journey as we are. So so it's I love it. I can't imagine myself I have been trying to, obviously because we all did so much campaigning in the general election, so I was trying to give myself a bit of a break over the summer, but I am going to go out campaigning. I'm going to be out campaigning tomorrow.
So the Conservative Party. What does the future of the Conservative Party look like to you? And where do you think we need to be in 4 years? And what gives you hope?
The way for us as a party to build back again, we need to build back trust. People lost their trust and faith in us. And we need to rebuild our party's credibility and brand again. I think Kemi, she's got a good, strong chance to do that, and we need to make sure. And I think I've seen some people say about criticizing her already, and I'm like, she's only been leading for 2 months. Give her a chance. I think it's ridiculous, and I think we need to give her time. We should let her set out what her plan is for the party. But I definitely think as well, thinking about the offer that we have and we should give for young people. And I've spoken a lot about this, and actually, even with my campaign, I was making sure that I was going to schools and talking about what the party is doing for young people, what more it could do. So I think we do have a real crisis when it comes to housing and affordability of housing, and making sure that we as a party take that seriously, because I think being a homeowner, that's the pinnacle of aspiration, right? And we can't call ourselves a party aspiration if we're not supporting people and families and young people onto the housing ladder. So we need to think about what kind of offer we have for a party. Is it housing reform is notoriously difficult, and Labour are going to go, they're going to find out about that themselves very soon. Let's see if they actually achieve their 1.5 million. I don't think they will. But so I think thinking about what offer we have for young people, not just about on housing, but also about tax too.
Yes.
And going off on a little bit of a tangent here now, apologies, but like just even around the economy, I think, and part of the reason why we have that problem with what's going on with government borrowing is that we've become a high debt economy, and public sector debt is an all-time high, and we need to address that. I think that's one of the that's a political crisis that all political parties will have to address.
Right.
And you just see reform with some of their policies that honestly it's ridiculous.
Living in cloud.
It's basically communism. That's what this. No, I'm sorry, but it's like socialism on steroids. And like some of their policies. We're gonna pay this and buy that and give this and all free this and all free that. And it's like, okay, how much is that going to cost? Who's going to pay for that? Like, do you not care about the stability of the public finances? And I think Labour's making that problem worse. So I think as a party, the way we build back is having a strong offer for young people, acknowledging what we did wrong, but also what we did right, and make sure we defend our successes and achievements. We spent £400 billion supporting people, supporting households, livelihoods, businesses during the COVID-19 pandemic. We have one of the best standards for reading, for maths, and that was through all the educational reforms that was introduced under Michael Gove, and now Labour wants to trash that. And we introduced same-sex marriage. We help make sure same-sex couples can adopt children as well. So we've done lots of things that we can be really, really proud of.
Tampon tax.
Remove that. So we need to defend our successes and achievements. So young people defending our successes and achievements, but also admitting where we got things wrong. But also the economy. Elections are won by economic stability and credibility. So I think we need to have, generally the public, we need to have an honest conversation about the economy, about the state of our finances. And Labour don't want to do that. They, yes, they want a significant majority, but now they're seeing the consequences of that now, and around 20-something% in the polls. Like it's the worst 6 months of a government ever. So, and there's a real opportunity for us to turn that around for our party.
And I think you're so right. I think it's about having the tough conversation, because there has to come a point where we discuss, like, what are we going to spend on and what are we not? And there are some things we are not going to be able to spend money on anymore because we just can't afford it. We've got a lot of debt to pay back. And I think if we're just upfront about it and really serious about it, I think you're right. We will win people over again.
I think a big, as in obviously we had a lot of like significant global events, with the Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the COVID-19 pandemic, which meant there was, the state did have to step in and spend lots of money, but it's not free money. It's taxpayers' money, it's government money and we need to pay that back with interest. And I think also it kind of speaks to a bit of a political culture about what people we need to have a conversation about the role of the state as well, because I think people's views of the state of government and expectations for government has changed as well. And I think people have a high expectation of government to do more, to be more involved and more active, which I think can be a slippery slope. I think we need to obviously we need to first, I think, build we have lost a bit of credibility during elections, so we need to build that credibility back up before we can have those conversations. But it is a conversation that needs to be had.
Absolutely. And I think you're right. I think with pre-COVID, I never really have bought into the austerity argument, and I know that sounds like bad and all the socialists are like screaming at the speakers, but I never really bought into austerity. It was we'd inherited a recession, and we needed to balance the books, and so we did what we had to do, and that was the role of the state. Like, that was what the state should have been doing. And then obviously post-COVID, we had a PM who really wanted to, Boris Johnson, who wanted to invest and he wanted to spend. And I get that argument because it's infrastructure and it was leveling up. But COVID was when things kind of tipped over, to the point where people then started to become so dependent on the state again. They're always looking for the state to fix their problems. What are you going to spend? And we then, as a Conservative Party, forgot who we were. So like on social media, I remember like I kind of post Boris time, every day on social media, we were posting graphics about how much we'd spent, how much this department spent on this or spent on that and spent on that. It's like, this isn't what we're about. And that's, I think, what made people really step back from us and think we kind of lost our way, because we shouldn't be boasting about spending everyone's money. Like, we should be focused on how we're going to pay back the money that we've already spent. So obviously, Samia, you've already let the cat out of the bag. You want to stand again, and as you should. So everything going to plan. You're an MP, you're on the green benches. What is a policy area that you're kind of focused on? What would you like to achieve as a parliamentarian?
Definitely around the economy, the state of the public finances. How can we drive growth? How can we encourage more investment, more foreign investment in our country? And that's a key enabler for growth, and particularly in infrastructure. Public debt, again, as I said, that's one of the biggest challenges that we have right now as a country. Hopefully, it would have been tackled if I were to become before I become if I were to become an MP. Hopefully, but yeah, that is something I would definitely want to try focus on those things, but also education, making sure dealing with any of the fallout and consequences of Labour's shambolic education policies, and really defending the changes that the party has brought in while we were in government, especially around academies, around, because academies were so important in terms of driving innovation. We need to have innovation. That's how you're able to, create a competitive area in terms arena for education, letting parents choose where they want to send their kids to, and then encouraging schools that are not doing so well to change, and to drive up and deliver better standards. So definitely education and the economy. Those are two areas that I would be quite interested in and want to focus on driving a better change there.
Amazing. Well, Samia, thank you so much for speaking with me today. It was a pleasure. And I'm sure everyone will agree that Samia is the future of the Conservative Party. But yeah, thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.